and welcome. Raising Your Game today. I'm David Levin. This is our Friday episode, so we're talking about the inner game of life. Tuesdays are for the mental game of sports and competition. Fridays are for the rest of our lives. So how is your mental game this week? How are you doing? I hope things are good. I hope you're settling in after all the back-to-school energy. If you don't have kids, it's still a bit of a transition getting back into the groove now that summer is officially over. Things are good here. School has started. Both our kids are really quite happy about it, which is super nice as a parent, of course. Happy about that. Personally, not super happy to have summer be over. To be honest, I really do feel the weight of the transition. Shorter days, winter coming. It's actually genuinely sad for me. It has a real physical and emotional effect. I guess that's why they call it SAD, right? Seasonal affective disorder. That's funny. Anyway, it's always like that this time of year. No particular concerns. Just a little seasonal bummer. So plenty to talk about this week. Some happy health news for me. A disturbing new announcement from the Taliban in Afghanistan. Trump's Arlington cemetery visit. Some thoughts on success and self-mastery and how they're related to each other. Caffeine risks. New challenge of the week. And some more book and show updates. All right, we'll start with ups and downs. So what gave me a lift this week and what things were pulling me down? The first lift was that my AFib, atrial fibrillation that we talked about last time, went away all on its own. If you remember, it kicked in a few weeks ago and just kept going. 24/7 abnormal heartbeat, which I guess is fairly common for it to continue like that. I was scheduled to go in next week and get my heart shocked back into a normal rhythm, but a week ago, Saturday, I woke up and it was gone, back to normal, and it's been that way ever since. That's a big relief, as you can imagine. Canceled the procedure. The only remaining issue is that my cardiologist would like me to continue on the anticoagulant meds forever, even though I'm not in AFib anymore. Stay on the drugs forever, just in case. Now, I love her. I think she's great. It's not a criticism, but I do have some concerns about her recommendation. The thing is, there is an elevated risk of stroke when you're in AFib. I would have a 3.5% chance of having a stroke in any given year, and that would be very bad, for sure. Or you could say I'd have a 96.5% chance of not having a stroke, right? That's the other way of looking at it. But it's also true that anticoagulants can cause their own problems, internal bleeding, for example, so it's not without some other risk. Also, I should mention this drug costs $500 a month, and that 3.5% risk is only if I'm in AFib, which I'm not. So the real risk is that I would go back into AFib and not notice. But I think I would notice. I'm pretty active. I pay a lot of attention to my heart, and my Apple Watch notified me last time. I have to assume it would catch it again next time too. So I think that's pretty unlikely. Bottom line, the recommendation is to spend $6,000 a year for the rest of my life and have the increased risk from the drug just in case I go back into AFib and don't notice. I don't think we're going to do that. Anyway, that's my biggest lift for the week. No more AFib. Fingers crossed that keeps going. The second one, and this was a real surprise. I mentioned last episode the idea to, when you see other people out in public, to ask yourself, what are they going through right now? I've been doing this myself the past 2 weeks, and it has been sort of transformational. It's pretty amazing, the difference. It turns out that when I'm out in public, I realize now that I'm normally in sort of risk assessment mode. I look at people, and at an unconscious level, I'm basically thinking friend or foe, like all the time. And of course, that assessment is solely based on what they look like, right? I mean, there's nothing else to go on. And when you just go by appearances, most people will seem different from us, right? Will seem foreign, pretty much by definition. So my friend or foe evaluation is returning mostly foe messages, which means I'm on guard most of the time without even really realizing it. But when I'm asking myself what someone might be going through, it just totally changes that. Of course, I don't have any idea what they're going through, but it stops me from seeing them as a threat. It makes me see them as an individual that I could probably relate to and even want to help if I could. It's just remarkable how different it feels. And of course, that lifts that anxiety of being on alert all the time. Now, I'm overstating this a little to illustrate the point. I'm not actually in high anxiety mode all the time. It's more subtle than that. But it's definitely real and sort of shocking. A shocking realization for me that I plan to keep working on because it's been so lovely and effective. And then the last one, just a little thing, was last night I had an especially fun time playing pickleball. I've not been happy with my game for a while, just not playing well, not feeling it. But I tried a couple of new things last night, and they actually worked. Played a lot better, ended up having the most fun I've had in a long time. I came home happier than I was when I left. That's just a lovely thing. For my downs this week, I already mentioned the seasonal blues. Related to that, and again, this happens every year, but this is a brutal time for allergies for me, and that just kicks my butt. I've been getting good sleep, but also just getting these massive sleepy waves during the day. I've taken many naps lately, like over an hour long. It's crazy. And of course, you feel all of that in your overall vibe too. So that's been a little hard, contributing to the weight of the past couple of weeks. Another is I've actually been feeling the weight of not having Coke Zero. So I'm still off it. It's going well. I've had maybe 3 in the last 2 weeks, which is amazing. And at first, it was all great. I feel better when I don't have caffeine. I feel better about myself for kicking a bad habit. So it initially feels all good, like what was I even thinking that I needed to do that, right? But later in the week, I started to actually miss it, like at a subconscious emotional level, like I was sort of sad to not be able to have some, which is so strange and interesting when you think about it. How is it possible that I would literally emotionally miss having something that was genuinely bad for me in really every way, and that I don't even really like that much? I mean, obviously, that's what addictions are about, but it's just been wild to experience it so directly. And by the way, it is objectively better for me to be off of it. I was always having, I mentioned getting SVTs before where my heart would double during exercise. That hasn't happened since. I would always get a little jittery, as you'd expect, after having some. It was the first thing my doctor suggested with the AFib. That's gone away now. Likely not a coincidence. So it really is, on every level, better to be off of it. But some deep part of me still misses it in spite of all that. I'm still doing fine, but feeling just a little bit of the weight of that. The other one is that a family member had some bad health news this week. Not going to go into the details, but it's pretty concerning. Going to be pretty disruptive for them for a while. And it's just interesting to think about how that affects us. Classic high gravity, really. There's a concern there, hovering in the background, always sort of weighing on you a bit, pulling things down just a bit. Anyway, hoping for the best there, of course. All right, those are my ups and downs for the week. Next up, top stories. The big thing on my radar this week is the outrageous new policy announcement from the Taliban in Afghanistan. So you probably know women have basically no rights in Afghanistan. It's systematized gender apartheid. Girls are not allowed in school beyond the 6th grade. Women can't work in most places. They can't go to public parks, gyms, and so on. They're not allowed to travel without a male relative. They can't leave home without being covered from head to toe. All of that is outrageous and ridiculous enough. But this latest announcement, I honestly assumed it was a joke when I heard it, like it was an Onion headline. I didn't even look into it. It seemed so impossible. But then I saw that it was actually for real. According to their latest policy, it is now illegal in Afghanistan for a woman to speak outside of the home. Literally, the sound of a woman's voice is illegal in public. You just can't get your head around it. 2024. How is this possible? And it's not like it's an old policy that's just still hanging around in some crazy corner of the world. This is a new policy growing out of a long trajectory of similar policies by the official government of a United Nations member state. And by the way, they promised not to do this. Back in 2021, after we left Afghanistan, people were rightly worried about what they would do. And they came out with a statement. You can find it online. They said they would honor women's rights. They encouraged women to return to work. They allowed girls to return to school. There was a female anchor on their nightly news program. But bit by bit, ever since, they've moved further and further away from that and back in line with their extreme fundamentalist views. The thing I want to say about this, beyond just the horror for the women of Afghanistan, is that this is a warning for the rest of us. This is what religious extremism leads to, or any sort of cultish extremism leads to. It starts out sounding reasonable enough. They promise there's nothing to worry about. But over time, it only gets more and more extreme. And you can already see that in the policy states have adopted since Roe was overturned. At first it was, it's just about being a federal law. It's not even about banning abortion, really. It's just about letting each state work it out for themselves. But as soon as it happened, all of a sudden, we do want to ban it, actually. And we don't really like IVF, now that you mention it. And same-sex marriage, too. And we're going to track your periods and restrict your travel. And there's basically no end to it. And then when you couple that extremism with the threat of violence and having the power of the state, it's not even clear that it can be reversed once it starts. One other detail about Afghanistan. They now have basically morality police posted on every corner, just thugs in the neighborhood who are officially authorized to enforce these laws by force if necessary. It takes very little to imagine similar vigilantes in our country if they were allowed to do it. And I don't think that's paranoid. There are plenty of people who would relish that power if given the chance. So when I talk about the religious right in this country, which of course includes our current Speaker of the House and many powerful elected officials, and I refer to them as the Christian Taliban, this is what I'm talking about. And it is a real threat. There are many people in this country seriously pushing for making this a Christian state, basically a religious theocracy. Project 125 has that written all over it. It's not subtle. It's not hidden. This is what they want. And if we allow it to happen, we may never be able to undo it. The other news item that connects in a way is this stupid Trump visit to the Arlington National Cemetery. You probably heard. He was invited to lay a wreath with the family, which is fine, but then wanted to go into an area that's not allowed and took a picture with the family with his ridiculous thumbs-up pose he always does. That was just offensive in every imaginable way. Arlington is the most sacred ground for the military for good reason. You don't take smiling pictures there over soldiers' graves and use them in your campaign. It's not just not allowed, it's actually illegal, and it's just disgusting and completely wrong. But it's perfectly in line with so many other offensive and disrespectful things he's done and said related to military service. So this incident is not directly related and connected to the Christian Taliban question, of course, but it does demonstrate the mindset of Trump and his people and how they look at norms and laws and even just basic human decency. They truly don't care about any of it. They don't believe the rules apply to them. Oh, you say it's not allowed to film and do political events at Arlington? Yeah, too bad. Get out of the way. They literally physically shoved the woman aside and then accused her of having a mental health episode for just trying to do her job and keep them out. And she declined to file charges because she was afraid of retribution from his supporters. Does that sound familiar? There is truly no shame, no bottom, no truth with these people. It's simply power above all else. So again, give them power, align them with extreme religious beliefs and Project 2025. What do we think will come from that? It's not hyperbole. This is what's at stake in this election, what's at stake. So let's get out there, shall we? The polls are good, but not that good. There's a lot of work to be done, super close. How will we feel if this comes to pass? And it really could, and we could have done more to stop it. All right. That's Top Stories. Next up, Inner Game Gold. Last time, we talked about a new idea. Never compare someone else's outer game with your inner game. Meaning, don't look at how happy and successful someone else appears to be and then feel bad about your real-life struggles. Instead, understand that everyone struggles, so they probably are too, maybe even more than you are. We just don't see other people's inner game. I think that's a very helpful reframe. This week, I want to return to the idea of success and self-mastery and how they're linked to each other. That's expressed in the quote that opens the Raise Your Inner Game book, comes from Leonardo da Vinci. He said, "The height of a person's success is gauged by their self-mastery." The height of a person's success is gauged by their self-mastery. Now, technically, he said the height of a man's success is gauged by his self-mastery, but that's all right. Same idea, different time. So again, the idea is that success, ultimate success, is not measured by the external things we see and tend to measure. It's actually gauged by how well we can manage our inner game. The feeling of success we have in ourselves, how we feel about ourselves as a person, how proud we are of ourselves, has nothing to do ultimately with external things. It's all about how strong we are internally. And I don't mean strong as in stoic or lacking in emotion or anything like that. I mean just from one moment to the next, are we being the kind of person we want to be, or are we getting pulled down and thinking and acting in a way that's not the person we want to be, that we're not proud of? That's what ends up being most important for our happiness and self-esteem in the long run. And that's what I take from his quote. The reason I'm thinking about this is, as I mentioned, it's been a rough few weeks, inner game-wise. Had the AFib thing, got knocked off my exercise routine, slipped with my food intake, big road trip, just lots of stuff going on that made things harder than normal. And it's super common for a stretch like that to become a downward spiral where things just keep getting worse and worse. You put on the pounds, it's harder to work out, you get more depressed, and so on, right? But because I'm in touch with it, and this is not to lift myself up, just to point out the benefits of self-mastery skills. Every one of our students has the exact same capability. But because I'm in touch with it, I'm paying attention, I understand what's going on, and I have the skills to stop the slide, now I can keep that spiral from happening. I don't take it personally. It didn't turn into a bigger thing. I just noticed, started doing a couple things differently, and I'm pretty much back. Again, nothing special about me. It's all about having practical self-mastery skills, but it makes all the difference in continuing to have that feeling of success and capability in your life. So that's the inner game goal to think about this week. The height of a person's success is gauged by their self-mastery. How are you feeling, and how are your self-mastery skills? If they're not where you want, get the book, Raise Your Inner Game, or if you're an athlete, take our Raise Your Inner Game Sports Academy training. I promise you will love it, and it'll be one of the best things you ever do for yourself. If you have read the book or taken the training and things aren't where you want, that happens, just pick it back up again. If you're finding things are harder than your skills are up to, don't worry. You still have what you need to feel successful. It's just a matter of a bit more practice and getting stronger with what you've learned, the same as it is with any other skill. All right, next up, raise your outer game. Last week, we talked about the new information about the health risks of alcohol. Today, I want to talk about the risks of caffeine. And for a lot of people, this is a much bigger problem to deal with. Now, I want to be clear, caffeine risks are nothing like alcohol risks. There's no evidence I know of for cancer or anything like that. From what I've read, the risks of anything serious are quite low if you're having less than 3 or 4 cups a day. But I still want to mention it because I'm dealing with it myself right now, and I imagine it's a bigger problem for a lot of people than they realize. So for me, as I mentioned, it was causing me to have SVTs during exercise where my heart would spike to double speed. Not necessarily dangerous, but uncomfortable, a little concerning, not great over time. It was likely a factor in my AFib because it went away when I stopped. Hasn't come back yet, knock wood. It contributes to high blood pressure, which I also have. It increases your heart rate, adds to your stress symptoms, as if we need more of those. Can give you trouble sleeping. Sleeping is not a problem for me with caffeine, but it is for a lot of people. And sleep, of course, is more and more showing to be maybe the most important factor in our overall mental and emotional and even physical health. Those are all physical effects, but of course it's also very addictive. And being addicted to something, even if it's not going to ruin your life, like alcohol or gambling or something like that, still takes a big toll on all the things that are important to us. We just talked about the relationship between self-mastery and success. Addiction is the opposite of self-mastery. I can tell you personally that even when everything else is looking pretty good with my inner and outer game, when I'm in the grips of something like this, Coke Zero or my nightly sweet dessert, gotta have it, it really chips away at everything else. I do not feel good about myself. I know I'm letting myself down, basically, and it feels a lot better when I break out of it and get back on track. In the book and the training, I say a bad habit like this is the make or break factor in your overall mental game. So it really is a very big deal. So I just wanted to shine a light on that again and suggest you at least take a look at it. If you are a coffee or caffeinated soda drinker, what can you do to cut that back or try stopping altogether? I know it's not easy, maybe even super hard. You might think it's insane, but doesn't that make it sound all the more important to do? I mean, really, when I catch myself thinking, I'm honestly not sure I can do this, to feel that way about anything, honestly, but especially a soft drink, I'm not sure I'm capable of not drinking this. That just sends a huge red flag to me that I have to do something about it, right? If you don't drink caffeine, congratulations. If you do, take a look. See what you might be able to do to cut it out or dial it way back. All right, that's Raise Your Outer Game for this week. Next up, our challenge of the week. This week, I want to first suggest you continue with the one from 2 weeks ago that I talked about earlier. Whenever you see someone out in public, ask yourself, what might they be dealing with right now? What are they going through? This has just been so helpful and eye-opening for me. I can't imagine it wouldn't have a similar effect for you. And then second, no surprise, your caffeine challenge. Take a look at your consumption, set yourself a challenge, none at all if you can, just to see what it's like and what it takes. At the least, cut it back as much as you can. Maybe nothing after noon, maybe every other day. Whatever you can do would be well worth your effort. And for sure, write down your experiences because they're going to be very interesting. All right, that's your challenges for the week. Next up, highly recommended. This week, a couple things. Still reading the Daniel Silva book, A Death in Cornwall. Going very well. It's exciting, interesting, surprising, well done, entertaining. Should finish that this week. Bad Monkey, the Apple TV show with Vince Vaughn. Enjoying that a lot now, getting better and better. Watching that with Margaret. We're both enjoying it quite a bit. Finished the Formula One show, Drive to Survive. Liked that a lot too. It's easy to recommend that if it sounds interesting. It won't for everyone, but if it does, I'm sure you'll like it. We are super excited for the new season of Slow Horses, also on Apple TV. Started this week. First episode was great. Can't wait to see where that goes. We also started another one, and by we I mean Margaret and I. It's very interesting, also on Apple TV. It's called Sunny. It's pretty strange. It's not a comedy. It's a little dark, but very interesting and intriguing. Feeling good about that one. So many shows to keep up with, but it's nice to have such great options, right? It's a good time for TV and for couch sitting in general. That's highly recommended. Reminder to check out the Raise Your Game book if you'd like to boost your mental game, get things on a better track, or the Sports Academy training if you play sports, take your game to a higher level. And that is it for this week. I hope you have a great week. Keep up the good work. I'll talk to you next time.